Okay, let's take a look. We've been sent a case here for tooth number 4. In this particular case, we have CEREC data here. In looking at it, my first look is this a good CEREC OptiGuide case? And the answer is yes. We cannot use tooth number 3, tooth number 7, 8, 9, 10, and maybe tooth number 13 can't be used for integration in terms of getting the OptiGuide, but we do have still several other teeth that can be used, and that's what was done here. So let's go ahead and move forward. And one of the first things we want to take a look at is go to the implant line view, and let's take a look at our implant. So let's go ahead and go through uh, our implant planning checklist. And the first thing we look at is our mesiodistal positioning. And here we can see it's hard to tell exactly what we have going on here in between the roots. So I'm going to use this slider here. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of move that around until I can see the roots a little bit better. And now we can see the roots a little bit better. And the truth is we're not perfect here, but it's pretty close. And the reason I say we're not perfect is if we get out our drawing tools here, and let's go ahead and draw the outline of one root right there, the outline of this root right here, and we can see that we definitely have a little bit tightness here compared to here. So in this particular case, what I would like to do is move this over to about right here. Now, what I would like to also point out, and I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this plan since I didn't quite yet. What I would like to also point out in this particular case in looking at this is when in looking at this, we can see right here that the, assuming again the CEREC data is correct, we can see right here that the buccal cusp tip of this premolar is right here, but yet our implant is slightly mesial to that. So in addition to my drawing, this kind of also gives us an idea of where that needs to be a little more mesiodistally. Now, if we come through and the next step is buccal lingually, again, we'll take a look here and we can say here, again, whether this is, more than enough space here, more than enough space here, so we're good. Again, just getting a little ahead of myself, we can see here that we're coming out of the buccal cusp of this tooth, but yet we have so much bone here, I know we can tilt this implant to get back in there, but we're going to come back to that. The next thing I want to take a look at is bone level. And our bone level in this particular case is not too bad, but if we were to draw a line, we can see that our bone kind of looks like so. So while this works, this is definitely a little bit subcrestal. So if anything, this implant can be moved down just a hair to about right there with no big issue. So next is vital structures. And the vital structures in this particular case are the adjacent root, tooth number 5, and the adjacent root, tooth number 3. We're pretty tight here, but we're okay, and we're away from the sinus. So next thing we want to look at is our occlusal table. And again, this is where we're going to see that if we were to draw out our lines, we can see the buccal of these teeth, the lingual of these teeth, the mesial contour of tooth number 3, the distal contour of tooth number 5. And we would say that if we were to draw this in half, we would want a hole coming out somewhere probably right there. And we can see that right now we have it right there. So we're definitely a little bit buccal on this particular case. And then again from here, we can also see, if I got my drawing tool out here, that we want the implant to come through here. Again, assuming that this implant plan, the CEREC design is done correctly. We want that implant to actually be coming out through about right here. So, so what I'm going to do here is our options are I can move it, but to move it, I'm going to thin out the bone quite a bit and leave a big gap here on the buccal. So instead, what I'm going to do is go ahead and tilt it, some this way and some there. And that's probably a little bit more accurate in terms of how we would like that tooth to emerge from this particular area. So yeah, no problem. So and once we do that, if you also notice, the next step is going to be the other thing we can take a look at from this occlusal table is that we're definitely a little bit more distal than mesial. We're hitting this tooth, so our options are to move, but it's a pretty tight space. So what I would prefer to do in this particular case is, in actuality, we're a little tight here compared to here, so I would actually like to move this to the mesial, somewhere about right there. So again, the reason I move that versus tilting that is because if we take a look right here, we can see that our space between the root and the implant is much tighter on the distal than it is the mesial. So tilting is not going to correct it as much. So instead, I'd rather just move the entire implant a little bit and maybe tilt it just a bit to get it a little bit more centered. And again, there we go. So the next thing we need to look at is our occlusal plane. And in looking at that, we can see here that it looks very nice. No big issues there. And the last thing we want to do is check our guide sleeves. And here we can notice that we may have to adjust the adjacent teeth. So what I would like us to do is when we order the guide, to avoid any type of delay in manufacturing, I would go ahead and make a note that you intend to adjust the teeth to allow the guide to fit. And then we'll go ahead and do our 360. And here we can see that there's really not much to worry about. The only thing we have to really to pay attention to is the sleeves on the adjacent teeth, any bone defects like that right there, and any type of sleeve hitting the tissue. And so far, we look very good there. So again, I would definitely make a couple of small changes to this plan. The plan as it was sent will certainly work, but this plan, as it's been corrected, is certainly a little bit better. So hopefully that was helpful, and we appreciate you sending in the case.